Hi, this is Paul with thetruthaboutnewcalvinism.com, and thank you for watching New Calvinism for Dummies. Let me give an overview of what we're going to be covering in this first part. So far in our research of New Calvinism, there was the unpublished book, Another Gospel, actually 2 editions of that. And as I began to delve into study of New Calvinism around 5 years ago, we look at our octopus illustration here. Another Gospel primarily dealt with the symptoms of New Calvinism. And there were 2 editions to that book, the first and second edition, both unpublished. But right now, both of those editions are being edited, and they will be posted online free of charge in a PDF file, and we're working on getting that done. Then, The Truth About New Calvinism, Volume 1, dealt with a lot of the basics of the doctrine and its history. I guess where the octopus has been and where it came from. But in this first part, which is kind of being borrowed from research that's working towards Volume 2 of the Truth About New Calvinism, we're going to be looking at the base philosophy that started the movement. So in this first part there will be a quick overview of that, and then the second part will put a lot more feet to the information. But this first part will be just a quick overview. Well, this is the historical chart of New Calvinism. This chart illustrates its whole history. We'll be primarily dealing with the box you see there, the Australian Forum, and to the right of that you see Robert Brinsmead's Seventh-day Adventist Awakening Movement and his second theological frame. Before then, there's a lot of SDA history that will be covered in the second volume. Those boxes were just recently added, and that's going to be covered in the second edition. For the purposes of what we want to do with this video, we're focusing on the Australian Forum, which is really where New Calvinism begun. And you see on the right-hand side there, the Awakening Movement. Robert Brinsmead was a young Seventh-day Adventist theologian, really a well-known one, and he started the Awakening Movement. And the theological frame that he used to start the Awakening Movement led to the development of what was called the Australian Forum. Their theological journal, as you can see there, was Present Truth magazine, and at one time was the most widely circulated English theological journal in the world, primarily during the 70s. Okay, on page 33 and 34 in The Truth About New Calvinism, we have a very important testimony from a Mr. Carey, who at the time was very young and was a witness to the Awakening Movement and how it had begun. His mother was a follower of Robert Brinsmead, and he says up then at the top of page 33 in the quotation box, in 1971, Brinsmead scheduled a flurry of summer institutes to bring us his latest emphasis. There was more excitement than usual. The latest round of tapes had prepared us for something big. Bob had been studying the Reformation doctrine of justification by faith, comparing it to Roman Catholic doctrines. Reading Luther, he saw that justification is not just a means to the end of perfect sanctification. When we are justified by faith, not only does God impute Christ's righteousness to us, but we also possess Christ himself. All of his righteousness and all of his perfection, eternity, flows from that fact. Then if you skip down, Brinsmead's premise was how he believed the Reformers interpreted Romans 8:30. And I'm going to paraphrase what the crux of his argument was. The crux of his argument is because sanctification was missing from Romans 8:30 and what they refer to as the golden chain of salvation, that meant that it was one and the same with justification. Because Romans 8:30 left out sanctification, all there really was between a profession of faith and glorification was justification. So we continue here at the top of page 34. Carey talks about the fact that they then included that the prior belief, sanctification was included in that chain, was adding steps to salvation. So salvation then had to be obtained by justification only. Alright. He says here in the second paragraph on page 34, the righteousness by which we became just in God's sight, remain just in his sight, and will one day be sealed as forever just in his sight, is an outside righteousness. It is not on earth, but only in heaven, only in Jesus Christ. True sanctification looks away from self and flows from the finished objective work of Christ. For many Christians, the glory of the crucified Christ is not their focus. Instead, they seek internal experiences that eclipse the cross. These are all just key. What we're reading here is forms the very basis of New Calvinism. This is, in essence, where it was born. The awakening rightly opposed the subjective, human-centered emphasis found among some groups within Christianity. Wrongly, they reacted with a cerebral, spiritless gospel. Brinsmead strongly opposed the charismatic movement's emphasis on experiences and a return to the theology of Rome. However, going to another extreme, Present Truth magazine decried the false gospel of the new birth and offered a new birth that was merely a corporate, objective blessing, not an individual experience. Okay, let me sort all of that out for you. First, we're going to look at an orthodox look at Romans 8:30. It's simply this. Orthodoxy holds that sanctification is separate from justification. In justification, all past and future sins are forgiven, and when we believe, we're God's justification is imputed to us, and glorification is guaranteed. And then looking down, nothing we do in sanctification can affect that. All right? So the two are totally separate. Now, this is the model that Brinsmead came up with, and it fuses justification and sanctification together. You're saved by faith alone, but sanctification, in essence, completes justification. Okay? And they call this the golden chain of salvation, which is a term that's been used by Puritans and theologians way back when. This is was the Australian Forum's, Robert Brinsmead's, the Awakening Movement, whatever you want to call it. They called this the golden chain of salvation. Sanctification actually completed justification. Now, this is where the Seventh-day Adventist influence comes to bear, because in developing a theological framework, Brinsmead was stuck in that mode of believing that sanctification finished justification. The two were the same. So he was stuck in that mode to begin with. Okay? So that's the two differences. In the Orthodox view, sanctification does not complete justification. Justification is a finished work that is done with and guarantees glorification. You can't lose your salvation, right? So, but not with this system. This system, sanctification, what they call progressive sanctification, deceitfully I might add, is progressive, but really what it really is progressive justification. Plainly, what they believed was that sanctification was justification in action or in motion towards glorification. Okay, around this time, the Australian Forum was started with their publication Present Truth, and Robert Brinsmead was joined by three other theologians, John Zenz, Jeffrey Paxton, and Graham Goldsworthy, to systematize this base doctrine into a consistent theology. And there they are. All these men are alive today. This is a doctored picture. Those are their faces, not their bodies. That's a long story. From left to right, John Zenz, Robert Brinsmead himself, Jeffrey Paxton when he was young, and Graham Goldsworthy. Alright, the Australian Forum was very focused on existentialism as what they saw is really the root of all evil. And so what happened here, and we see here an article that John Zenz wrote in Present Truth, the bankruptcy of existential theology, excuse me. Again, they really saw this as the root of all false doctrine and the world's problems. Okay, this is Soren Kierkegaard. He was the father of existentialism. We're going to look at this deeper in the second part, because the doctrine that the Forum developed, really Robert Brinsmead, that launched the Awakening movement, was the antithesis of this doctrine. In other words, they sought to come up with a doctrine that was as far opposite as it could get from existentialism. We'll be looking more at that in the second part. Okay, this concludes the first part, and we will continue in the next part where we left off here. Thanks for listening.